Mike Coppell, alternate.
Rich Rita ex officio.
Bill Spencer,
John Rosine, member.
Wendy Rathke, remember?
Bill Larson, member.
Right, and then I guess we better seat Mike.
Yay.
yeah,
Excellent. And let's start off with the minutes from August 8th.
I think on copy I had didn't have numbers along the side, but line numbers, but on page 2, mine, let's see, I have, should be briefly, not shortly.
I'm sorry, what line was that?
Which section is that?
There was no line in my online copy. Give me a second to find it. It's just, let's see. Somebody would maintain. Oh, I would say too, on this one, we don't really identify who Craig Larson is, probably helpful.
Okay.
Someone, 5 years from now, wondering who Craig Larson was and they made this, comment. Yes, here it is, line 54. This was discussed shortly, do you mean briefly?
Yes.
And in terms of committee, conservation preservation, this is page number 97. I was here. It was NTR.
Oh, okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
So moved. All right,
You should have a vote.
vote.
All
Aye.
in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So moving on to the minutes of September 12th.
Line 23, there's an extraneous parentheses after meeting. Line 38, the conversation that's focused on accessory buildings. Do we mean
Yeah,
also focused?
or versus buildings versus.
Or I was gonna say.
Oh.
Yeah, versus two.
Or opposed. Versus.
The conversation also focused on accessory buildings versus garages and setbacks. Two different structures.
Are we making a concerted effort to call it the select board as opposed to the selectmen? Is that something I know we talked about it a couple months ago. Is that been a concerted effort across town documents or no?
Not
I
that
know it
I
had
I
been
asked about it.
discussed.
This wasn't really- I don't think it's been a concerted effort to change it. We can't.
Well, because like maybe on 67, we can start that push, the select board.
And line 40, after the word setback, should be a semicolon.
is it a farther setback of 20 feet? So it's a
Or is-
setback of
is it a
30?
diff-
Where-
No, I thought it was a setback, not a further setback.
And so it's not a further, right?
Okay.
It's a setback of 20 feet. Okay,
So line 40,
yeah,
That was my.
should require, there should be a setback, is that what you're saying?
A setback.
yeah, right. Well, it should be correct. I mean, I don't think we have a 30-foot setback for buildings, right? What do
No,
we
the
have?
intention was to have it a 20-foot setback.
What do we have for buildings?
You,
No,
we have for
we
roads.
have a 20-foot setback?
Yes.
Where?
Roads, I
Okay.
think it's 35 on.
All right, good.
Zone.
Anybody know?
What district
zone?
are you talking about?
Right.
Well, in a
To
single-family
answer-
home, the main structure has got to be set back from,
In which district?
well, let's take, because this is, it's.
I'm not looking
really-
at the minutes, so I don't know what
Yeah.
district you're talking about.
It doesn't specify district in the minutes, and then
I thought that it was
No,
across.
it's
I
low
thought it was
density.
across the board.
No,
No.
it's different, a different district. It's 35 feet. It's 20 feet in the C1. 20,
How much is it in low density?
35.
35 feet.
Mhm.
Well, shouldn't it be the same? Why are we introducing the concept of, 30 feet now?
There's no 30-foot talked about anywhere, but
Well, these minutes imply that.
Right.
No, well, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be 30 feet, it should be 20.
so farther needs to be struck.
Right.
It's
Yes.
not 10 plus 20, it's just 20.
It's just 20.
Okay. So we are introducing a different setback.
you already have a different setback in the C1.
Okay.
We were discussing I think we were discussing primarily, exclusively the LDR.
Right, I thought so. I
Right.
thought the
We were talking
discussion
about
was
people with
primarily about
houses.
LDR.
Yeah, people with houses and,
Yeah,
so that's the setback that that particular zoning district, is what that sentence refers to.
In the LDR, it's 35 feet from the right of way, it's 20 feet from
property line.
side and rear.
But maybe we just say, anything larger required or is governed by the zoning district setback. That's what we're trying to say.
I don't know,
Right,
yeah.
I'm not reviewing your minutes.
Yeah, no, I think that's what we were trying to say. We were talking about it in the context of single-family homes.
Right.
So I wasn't here, so what do you guys feel like is the best way to clarify this?
It should be subject to the same setbacks as principal building. Well, we're not introducing a different setback for a garage that's over a certain size. We're saying it should be
Same
subject
as-
to the same rules as the principal
Whatever.
building.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
In that particular zone, right.
Okay.
That's what we were trying to say. We may not have known it at the time, but that's what we were trying to say. There was one, just looking at it. We had a discussion of the master plan, yes, line 47. I think T. Bamford spoke to the agenda of the meeting. Spoke to the itinerary. And there's line 66, should be than, not then, premium prices, like that less than. And I would spell out, we at one point just say the resort. Let me just find the line here and I see what it is. We should spell it out, the Waterville Valley Ski Resort, at least for the first time. Yeah, I'm looking for my copy online, didn't have line numbers, so it was at the end of the,
Yeah, it's line 84.
yes, thank you. With the border, yes, and the Waterville Valley ski resort, just so that it's. Hmm.
Oh, I gave my copy to her.
I don't.
Any other comments on the September minutes? Your motion to approve,
That's a motion.
second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alrighty, let's move on to the fun stuff. So, we'll start with Tara, thank you for being here again, and the zoning. amendments.
So what I sent out has the changes that we've been talking about at the last couple of meetings, incorporated in the text. There's nothing new or different. I did identify a couple of questions while I was working on it. We did have one question that I think we're still waiting for from the building inspector about the 30 feet distance between buildings. So my first question though was on page 9. We talked a lot about what was a structure and what wasn't, because you know, you talk about setbacks and structures, you need to be clear for your code enforcement officer what you're talking about. So
So you're talking about line 9, or item 96, right?
right. And so you had made the decision that something like play structure, like a swing set, needs to be subject to the setback. So I was wondering if it should also talk about something like a tennis court. Or like, do you want to articulate that those are structures too that need to be subject to a setback?
Yeah, I guess you imagine tennis courts would have a fence around them, which would make them fall under it, but
Like a swimming pool or tennis court, if you, I'm just following your reasoning, if a swing set needs to be set back, then I would assume that you want a swimming pool or
Yes.
tennis court as well. Yeah.
But don't you get there by what's not included? I hate to put the double negative in the bad English, but by not having the not in there for a tennis court, for example, doesn't that mean it is?
I think in this community, a couple of common examples like swimming pools and tennis courts would be good to include.
Yes.
So what are we saying about tennis courts
But they need to meet the setback.
of the principal building?
Like the
Right,
principal building.
Yes.
right.
Okay. Think about that.
Is a fence required around a swimming pool in this state?
I think
I
so.
think so.
which would make it fall under.
I mean, I know that in most
Yeah.
states,
Yeah.
the fence is required, but it doesn't, the fence doesn't have to be 3 feet high, for example. Around a swimming pool in Massachusetts, for example.
I would hope it would be higher.
Yeah.
I would hope so too, but I don't think it does, but.
Similarly with a tennis court. I don't think anybody would build a tennis court without
Well, fine, I don't have a problem putting in, swimming pools and tennis courts. I can't imagine a lot of people building them, but
Right.
And Tara, did you have a way to group all that together? Had you suggested a wording? You said, playgrounds, pools, tennis. Do you think it's worth listing each one off, or was there like a recreational structure? Or does that get into too many other things we can find?
I guess I would add to the first sentence, where we're saying including but not limited to,
building walls,
Right.
fences,
right?
tennis courts.
That's
and
the
farm
sentence I would add.
Piers and floats. I don't know where we would even have a pier or a float.
I don't know, that's existing language.
But-
I think it's saying if, well, in Cochran's Pond, if somebody.
Well, that'd
do
be
a
the
pier or
one
float,
place,
they need a permit, they need a building.
I don't know whether it applies, I don't think we allow a lot on a water-based area, right?
You have that special district.
We have
along
that
there,
special
yeah.
district which allows somebody to build a pier, I think.
Right, this is just saying they need to come in for a building permit.
Right.
The only pier would be on Cochran. I think.
So my next question was about, whether the height limits apply to other structures besides buildings. Because most of the ordinance reads like the height limit is only buildings. But then there's a couple places like on the bottom of page 12 where I highlighted, where it's section C1D I1. And one of the reasons the planning board can give a conditional use permit for an extra height is that the added height makes the building or structure more aesthetically attractive. And I'm wondering why we're having structure there when we don't normally talk about the height limit apart from building structures that are also buildings. And there's this, it needs to be taken out of those sentences, or it needs to be added to the ones about the height limit. But I think especially where you're looking at gondola towers coming in, that it's something the community supports, I don't think this is the time to I don't think this is the time to allow
Back
the,
up on 9.
I don't think this is the time to expand the height limit to be all structures, if that's something the community is supporting. I didn't hear, I wasn't done.
Gondola towers, I'm assuming, where it says structure does not include poles. I would assume that a gondola tower is a pole.
Yeah, that, I was trying to, I don't think so in that sentence. And that's why I separated, I changed the, that to be the end of that sentence. I think this poles, lines, cables is about utilities. It's about the transmission, distribution of utilities. And that's why I ended, put a period there when I edited the definition of structure.
So when and if, supposed to just say when. When the resort wants to build their gondola, they're gonna have to come here for permission to put in their towers.
Yes,
Well, they would. But if the zoning doesn't allow it,
the zoning does allow it.
Right. They have
What,
use by right.
right now, it does allow it.
well,
and
except that we say that the maximum height is 45 feet.
No, you say the maximum height for a building is 45 feet. And that's why I'm asking why,
We should take out
I'm
structure.
suggesting that I think this is a mistake where in the exceptions to height, it says the added height makes the building or structure more aesthetically attractive. I think that structure is a mistake from looking at the rest of the ordinance. The ordinance reads like the height limit is only about buildings. And it even exempts pieces of buildings that aren't inhabited,
You're
like
back on line
steeples and
12, page 12.
cupolas somewhere.
I agree.
Suggest and accept it.
Okay,
Then
Um,
let's go back and talk, I suppose, since we're gonna have to talk about it eventually anyway, hopefully. What do we do with gondola towers and cables? Is that something we should worry about now? Is it covered in here
It's
somewhere?
already in
It's
there
a
as an
structure.
allowed
it's allowed.
Yeah.
It has to meet the setback. It's,
But it
it's
has no
clear to
height
me how the
restriction.
ordinance applies to it.
Okay. How about air rights?
use, but it's all in there.
So the air rights, so if they put something over land that is not owned by.
That's a
theirs.
private landowner matter,
Okay, so we don't have to worry about
not the town.
that, thank God. Okay,
I mean, when it comes to site plan review, I think you'll wanna see that they have acquired
right.
the air rights. But that's not something you talk about in here. So, my other question was really, I don't know if Mark had circled back to you, about the proximity of buildings. That's throughout the ordinance. It talks about separate buildings should not be closer than 30 feet at the closest point. And I haven't known whether that's applied to buildings on one lot or separate
It's
lots.
separate, I believe, the way we've been enforcing it is separate lots.
So if we're talking about making side setbacks any smaller than 15 feet, then that doesn't gonna work anymore. And we have talked about making them smaller, so that's why I been bringing that up, that we're like about to introduce a conflict if we leave that alone. And is that, like most fire lanes in regulations, other regulations I work with are 20 feet. What's your feeling about that?
I'm fine with 20 feet, and I didn't really have any input on that, on the ordinance there. I think that's been in place for quite a while, as far as the 30 feet. So I'm fine with 20 feet, it's just aesthetics and what the town would be looking for. But the whole purpose, I believe, of that is what is the, the exposure to somebody else's property. If one of your buildings is on fire, you have that buffer zone.
On both sides.
Yes.
So basically, we're saying there's really a 40-foot,
No,
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 well, it's 20 on each
but-
side,
no,
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 we're
20
talking
total,
about
or
10.
it's 30 total, so 15 on each side.
15 on each side.
but you're all right with 20 from a fire perspective.
From a fire perspective, I'm fine with 20.
So if we don't go smaller than 10, we're good,
Mhm.
which is what proposed, but there's also, right now, this is where the conflict right now, don't go to me. Right now, you can have a garage 6 feet from the property line,
Right, an accessory structure.
which the
Right.
garage would seem to be like something you'd really want
Yeah,
a separation
Yeah.
distance. So what's your feeling about that?
yeah, I think it should be 10.
that seems to make sense, because no matter what, you want to be able to get vehicles.
Yeah, or people or
Have that
whatever.
buffer.
Not-
Yeah.
6 feet, 12 feet's not very much. 12 feet is, what, 4 yards, that's not a lot.
So it would seem for consistency, then we'd wanna look at changing the 30 to 20 and changing that special, you can have this 150 square foot building from 6 to 10 feet.
Mhm.
That would be yours. It's already 10 in the LDR, but it's 6 in all the others.
Now that's for side and back. Now what about road frontage?
Well, the road is your fire lane there, so.
Right, so was the original intent 6 foot back from the road is okay, but not from the side or back?
No, I think it's all,
You have-
all buildings.
You have bigger setbacks from the front.
Yeah, for all buildings.
Right.
Does it say in the ordinance that all setbacks from roads is 35 feet?
And you should have the ordinance in front of you with
Yes.
the proposed changes in Mark
That's what I
that you've
recall,
been working with.
35 feet from a road.
Depends where you are.
Depends where it's zone you're in.
Right, it's different from a right of way and a paved edge, and it's different by district. So I would wanna clarify, I think, that that's separate lot, buildings on separate lot. And the buildings on one lot are gonna be governed by the building code, right, and that's based on the materials that you go out of and, so does that make sense then? Is that what I should do, change the 6 to 10 and the 30 to 20? I think that's all the questions I had when I was going to incorporate the changes that we've been discussing. Did,
So, question for Chris, when you, a fire lane, is there a defined width of a fire lane? How much space do you need to pass the fire truck?
Well, it's different and different, depends on the makeup and the material of what we have to work with. So that's all a subjective thing upon the building permit application. So, yes, obviously we go by setbacks from the zoning, but if there's any particular special hazard or something, we can either decrease it or increase it, depending on what it is, but it's got nothing to do with setbacks. You know what I'm saying? So we regulate the fire lanes within the building envelope, and not the setbacks.
Right, that's why I asked about a fire lane. How wide is the fire truck?
Yeah, well, generally, it's 11 feet is what we go for a fire lane. That's the general rule. Except for if you have a shared driveway that's longer than, say, 200 feet, then like when Bill Cameron came in for his latest project, we had him do a bump out so that we could have an 11-foot or 12-foot road with a bump out that we could put a fire truck in and still get back and forth. So it was all, it's all special considerations when we're looking at a subdivision. That respect.
so the next step is a public hearing on these. We need a tentative date for that.
All right, was that the November 6th?
And my suggestion is that you look at it as, I was gonna say 3, amendments, but now I'm thinking that you might wanna separate out the change in the accessory setbacks.
The more you break them down, the better.
Not always.
I know, but
But what I try to do is put everything that shouldn't be an issue and is not so substantive altogether. there's a lot of stuff like that with the language about structure versus building. But then I would separate out the change in setbacks in the VC as an amendment, and the change in setbacks in the C1 as an amendment, and the change from the 6 to 10. As an amendment. People could have different feelings about different.
Yeah, makes sense.
So the board, vote to have us notice the public hearing, with the two changes that we talked about.
So is there a motion to approve the changes and move them forward to public hearing?
I
Or
so
do we
moved.
further-
I do it, just the technicality, do we approve them now, or do we just vote
thought
to
we-
move
I
them
thought
to
we
the
moved
public
them
hearing?
forward.
Okay. yeah, to move
We
them
can't
to public
approve them, I
I
believe,
thought we-
until
I
after
thought
the
we-
public
I-
hearing.
I-
right?
think so.
I move, we move the proposed amendments forward to a public meeting.
Hearing,
Here,
Public hearing.
I'm sorry.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And that's scheduled for November 6th,
I'm sorry, what was the time?
that one is
6
evening.
PM,
Yeah, we decided to,
due to popular demand.
What a concept.
whatever.
Working people can make it to the meeting.
November, so that's Wednesday, November 6th. I have it at 6 o'clock at the meeting. And when is our regular?
A week from that Thursday,
Right.
so it's 14th.
Good, I won't be here. Okay.
I'll be at a conference.
Okay, so
Oh, wait a minute, so you're not gonna be here? And don't, isn't that, for that meeting, we're gonna want Tara here,
are you talking about the 6th or the 14th?
I'll be at the hearing.
14th, because whatever comes, especially if something comes up at that meeting that we're gonna have to reconsider, we're gonna want Tara around.
Well, I would think we ought to be able to have, I mean, we've had her guidance all along, and I don't think anything should be able to handle.
No reason we couldn't chat, have a meeting, continue the discussion after the hearing, like close the public hearing that night
And talk then.
and give me any direction for a second or.
Okay,
It
If
was
it's
so-
like,
fair
if
to
it's all
say,
blown up, then we schedule another conversation that I
Right.
can.
if we made any significant changes to the text, we would have to hold a second public hearing anyway.
Right.
Right?
And that's usually the plan and why
Right.
we're having
Doing
it
it
plenty
in
early.
Right. What do we have to post regarding that November 6th meeting? Just throw something up at the post office?
It's gotta be
Right.
posted in
There's
two places in the
marked
paper
There's a whole-
and mailed to the
All right,
landowners.
so let
In those two
me go back
districts,
to
and
your,
Work with Nick
let me
on
go
that.
back to your, one of your comments. In the paper, which I assume means,
Like an enterprise.
It's a record enterprise, is what they use.
No, but there's no, the law reads we have to put it in the paper. We can't, we.
I understand, what I was saying is the
Yeah.
wigwag paper, the wigwag paper.
No.
It's not a scandal sheet.
Well, it's monthly, so it's not able to be,
I shouldn't say that.
There's a whole standard procedure.
Okay,
Follow
that's fine.
public notice. And it's not 21st century,
Well, no,
but it's what we have to do.
I'm just saying, I don't know how many people read that newspaper.
Well, they have the post office,
Yeah, that's true, so we have to make sure. it's posted.
and you can go door to door.
I will go door to door because all
Remind people.
of the
Right.
12 people that will be around in the beginning of November.
That's right.
all right, so now that we have that clear.
It also has to be mailed to
That's right, to
anybody
your
in
buyers.
districts with less than 100 landowners.
Say that again?
It gets mailed to anybody in a zoning district that's changed, that they have less than 100 landowners, which is basically anybody.
Everybody.
And as a matter of course, it's posted.
Let me, I
on the
want to
website.
go back. Just,
Should be.
I'm slow.
Yeah.
Definition of a landowner, okay? Is the landowner of Tri-Pyramid, or is it John and Era?
It's right here, and, I think it's also the homeowners association.
Who pays
Well, by
taxes.
homeowners association, Tri-Pyramid, I mean the homeowners association.
Yeah,
So-
the state law, it has a definition of a butter.
So
that-
basically,
That articulates what it means.
if
in
it is a homeowner,
condominium.
if it is the association, not the
Right.
individual owners, then it is almost everybody. So there we go.
Assuming the homeowners association disseminates that information.
That's
to their
not,
members.
that wouldn't be our
That's
problem.
not our,
No,
But that it goes, but that means it almost goes to almost every homeowners association. Is that what we're saying?
Why not?
Yes.
right?
Yeah, what's that?
That's
Is
to
there an issue?
Yeah.
No, I don't have an issue. I'm just saying,
exclude anybody.
we have to make sure that that gets done.
That's my job.
That's
Well, we've made it through all these years with it being properly
right?
noticed.
Almost
so I
all the
think
time.
we're okay.
Almost all the time.
Almost all the time.
there've been a few,
Most of the time.
but now that Nick's here, this will be done. Otherwise, you're gonna go see him. He does not want that.
All right, let's
It
move on.
certainly has been done with all the zoning ordinance.
We done,
Yeah,
yeah.
all of these years. People seem to find out.
And how much notice in advance do they have to have 2
10,
weeks?
10:30.
Excellent.
So, pretty soon.
Right.
Okay,
You'll need to let me know what day you need it for the newspaper.
Okay.
What, not when they need necessarily, but when you want it from me for the newspaper.
All right, so should we move on to the visioning report?
Can we take the subdivision
Subdivision?
regulations out of order so
Absolutely.
that,
Sure.
So I had sent out kind of a half-done, rewrite of the subdivision regulations in part to get, feedback on what's done and also in part to, get input on the reorganization. So I've given you the outline for all of it.
Yes,
Yeah.
good.
Very good. It makes sense.
it actually made sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, those much better.
Good, so we can just now talk about some of the substance. So before I made any changes to, are you the road agent? That's great, because I don't think I'm that true. I'm Tara, and I knew that Jim was gonna be asked to be here, but. So, and I got the road standards from Mark. And normally those would be in the subdivision regulations in detail. And I don't know if you have any feeling one way or the other about that as opposed to, I think it gives them a little bit more teeth.
Correct.
But under state law, that's really how you adopt road standards is the planning board adopting those standards.
Of course, I would think we're about 20 years late.
Well,
I don't think there's many roads that the town will take over that would be able to be built at this time.
right, and it doesn't really matter if the town takes over or not, I mean, the
Right.
standards are the same.
Yeah.
And, so one of my questions to you, is how, are you happy with the standards? As they are?
Don't say yes or no.
Say maybe.
The standards that we
Let's
have
say no.
are based on NHDOT standards and just, typical standards of the industry. So from that aspect, yes, I am happy with it for the most part, because they do deal with, there are obviously substandard roads that are built into developments that the town is not going to accept, right? Because it's never meant to be a town road.
Right.
Correct?
Correct. We call them driveways.
Well, let's
Correct.
keep that a different conversation, but I mean, I think as a planner, I mean, I don't recommend different road standards based on expectations, whether it might be now or not.
Correct.
There's a right way to build it, and I also tend to incorporate, a lot of the DOT specifications by reference into the regulations.
The interesting thing is that if a private development goes in, whether or not the intention is to turn that access road, if you will, over to the town at some point in time, there is no inspection by the town for the construction of that road.
That's not how I wanna see it going forward.
Me neither.
And I think that's not how the most recent subdivision approval was set up.
So, I mean, if the most recent one, if it's the one that I'm thinking of, is, if, as they're building that, if the town wants inspection on it, then, somebody will have to tell me.
Right, and my recommendation to Mark was that the inspection fees be escrowed before the plan sign. That's how, you always want those inspection fees in hand before you approve the plan.
Correct.
I want us to take a step back. Like, my brain was becoming confused. The private roads / driveways.
We're not talking about driveways right now, we're talking about roads. With blinders on as to whether the developer says it's gonna stay private or not. Because no matter what the developer says, the landowners can petition the town to take it over.
Right. Correct.
Think of Cascade Ridge.
Or Moose Run.
Lost Path Road.
Right, lost, yes.
Okay,
Those were built as private roads. And the town has since taken them over.
much to us.
Well,
And
if,
that brings up
if,
Jim's.
that brings up my comment. If the town ever asked me what my opinion was, I'd say stay the heck away.
Correct, I would have said the same thing. So then I guess the question that comes up is if something is built as a private road and is designated in the plat, in the subdivision approval that we approve, that it will in perpetuity be a private road, theoretically, they could still come and ask us to change that in theory.
Right, you can't put that condition on because it's out of the planning board's control.
No, I understand.
What you can do, and what we did with this last subdivision, is ensure that controls are in place to make sure it's constructed appropriately, and that there's a private mechanism in place to keep it maintained
Okay,
in the event it did stay private. It's still in the town's interest before you sign the plat to see those covenants that explain how the landowners are gonna work together to fund and execute improvements on that road. Because you don't want it to fall apart
I understand.
and then they come and ask the town.
So
to go,
theoretically, when our road, all right, when Deborah Way was built, all right, it was built to be my responsibility, our responsibility,
That's correct.
all right? And theoretically, although we never will, no offense, and know what you do because you couldn't get down there now because of this now. We could come along and say, hey, we want the town to take it over, and we're gonna say no. That's beside.
Or yes.
Or yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's
right.
Right.
It's just a question of getting the votes.
That's
No, I
right.
understand.
Because there is in fact an association
Yes, there is.
that is going to be asking the
Run by my wife.
Right.
I tell her
Well,
So, but I mean, is it in the town's best interest to take that over? In my opinion, no.
my opinion, no.
but we have some because of, just history. We have some roads that, we have a dirt road that the town plows.
Mhm.
Well, what-
Tower Road.
Tower Lane, we plow it. Why? Well, we've always plowed. That's, you know, and it doesn't meet the definition of anything.
So why do we
Except
plow?
for emergency access.
That's
Well,
it.
we plowed.
Yeah.
We've always plowed.
So let's
So
talk,
that's the problem you have.
so let's
when
talk
you
about this
confront a
other,
homeowner.
other category, because this kind of brings me to the thing that always been thrown at me.
Mhm.
You have this category in your road standards that I've never seen in any other town. Called an internal road, where you basically let people have smaller lots by not counting any of the road right away
Right,
is subtracted. And then you have this other standard for it. And I'm gonna make every argument, and I'm hoping that you'll be on my side on this to change that category. And if it's in a condominium complex, fine. It's in that category that's kind of a driveway, but kind of a road.
Tower Road.
But if it's in a subdivision with separate lots, it's a road and really ought to have a right of way. I could see the right of way being able to be reduced to say 40 feet if they can show that the drainage and grading all fit in there. I mean, but this idea of having no right of way, that's just a way to pretend you have a minimum lot size that you don't.
right.
Is there any strong feeling on the board about?
Well, I can remember when, in Moose Run, when we approved those lots, to me, I was not aware that those were substandard lot sizes. Now, I could have done the calculations. Nobody raised it at the meeting that I'm aware of. You know, I thought they were standard lot sizes.
Bill Cantlin was very honest with this board in saying that, you know, why this road had to be treated a different way because, well,
right.
gee, that will take away from how many lots he could have. Well,
Right,
yeah, that's what a road does.
yeah,
Don't
right.
we have that exact problem with the new development? If you do the calculation, one of the lots is exactly a half acre, including its portion of the road. I think. Is that not true?
That rings a bell.
All right, so basically that which you are saying, we have repeated.
Because,
Did I say that right?
we're trying
It's
to,
your fault. I didn't mean-
we're working on your regulations now,
No, we
So
can't,
that-
we can't look backwards. I understand.
right?
Well, you can look backwards for guidance.
Right, learn from your
Yes.
mistakes, but, all right, so my take on this would be, in your subdivision regulations where you have table 1, and I don't know what page it would be in yours, but, instead of calling things arterials and collectors and internal roads, to put how many potential cars per day and have the categories of width and right of way, based on that.
Because that's defined by DOT.
Right, that's what we would normally do. And so I would take a crack at making some amendments to the road standards, run it by you, before the board and go from there.
To me, that internal road, I've never seen that before, but an internal road, say you're going in and the best, I guess the best example would be High Country. You go down the main, what you would call the main road of High Country, quote unquote, and each little offshoot to little different places, it's like an internal road. And what is it? It's just
Driveway.
not even, it's a parking lot. Really.
Right,
Yeah,
It's just one big parking lot with units dispersed throughout.
No.
You know, that would be my
So,
description
all
of it.
right, so my definition of that would be the main road, as far as I'm concerned,
Mhm.
is the driveway and the others are parking.
Well, but you can't really call it a driveway, that's a misnomer, because right, our driveways can only service, what was it, 4 units or 3? residents?
You're the fourth, right?
So what is it?
See, because just so you guys
That's
know.
the
It was
issue.
built.
Internal
That's the
road.
issue.
What it is
It's an
existing,
internal road.
Yeah,
Right.
you know, and so at the point in time that got approved, somebody didn't.
My
read the
biggest, my
regulations
biggest
or
fear is
something.
I'm gonna have to continue on down Osceola, right? All the way through into the, turn around somewhere by Sununu's house,
That's
come back out, plow it and treat it, and then do the same in Windsor Hill.
We will work very
You
hard
know?
to make sure that,
Well, it's up to
way
the
back,
town.
way back when it was obviously the developers that were making the rules.
Right.
And
Right.
that's how
Right.
a lot of this came about.
Right.
yeah, so it's time to modify it for what's best for the town. So I would think, now, how would you be able to predict the cars per day for creating width? How does that work?
The standard is 8 vehicle trips per residential unit.
Okay. So you would assume that any road constructed, so we would strike internal versus external, any road is providing access, and we would just have to know how many eventual residences are going to be on that road.
And one of the reasons you have a right of way that's bigger than the road is suppose it was extended and more
Right.
houses
That's what I'm
than
saying.
expected, like they said, no, it's only ever gonna go this far, so you make the road a certain width, and then surprise,
Right,
it changes, you have room to require them to widen it.
okay. Gotcha.
So how many of these private roads or driveways, how many instances are there where the town has been asked to take them over? All of them?
Well, there's, one that we do winter maintenance on, but we charge.
Yeah, there's a fee.
There's a fee for it. There's another pending that I'm aware of. I don't know if they will go forth with it, but I do know that there's talk that it will be pending. That's my company.
that's fine.
And there is, there is Stone Tower that we do. I mean,
But
essentially.
winter maintenance only, right? You don't,
Which is-
you're not responsible for the road itself.
No, it's
Right.
maintenance only. You could argue Boulder Path up from the library because everybody's property line is the center of the road. So that's kind of interesting. So there's different things throughout the road. We just go as far as we can.
Jim, when people ask the town to take over, what exactly does that mean? I'm gonna ask you to take over my driveway. You can say no? Is that what
No,
that-
the procedure for that is it has to be an article on the warrant. It has to get voted in by town meeting for the town to accept that particular, the responsibilities associated with taking over.
But then you're totally responsible. Once, when we vote to agree, so
Maintenance.
maintenance of the road,
Everything,
drainage, everything.
Right, it
Yeah.
becomes a class
Right.
5 town road.
class 5 town road.
So in how many instances has it occurred that the developer built one of these private roads? And then it turned out that the town has to maintain it in every respect?
Well, there were a couple. I know
Couple.
River Road was originally built as a private road.
Okay, this is before me, so.
Yeah, but it was built as a private
Uh,
road. It was owned by the
Cascade,
association and the town voted to take it over. And I think Moose Run and Cascade Ridge are the other ones.
So the question becomes, are we kidding ourselves when we allow the developer to build a private road? Because we know that down further in time, it's gonna be taken over by the town.
Well,
and
and I-
maintained by
I
the
think
That gets to Tara's point, I think. So if
Yes.
we reword the table, and I guess I'd like to know the board's sense, it seems like Tara has a really great recommendation to get rid of this internal road, recreate the table based on the potential cars per day, since that's more in line with the NHDOT anyway, and make sure that there are methods for inspection get the escrow fees in place, right, for inspection.
But they have the
before-
right to do that now, don't you?
But we don't.
We don't, but
So we
it's
need to
not
make
because of a lack of regulation.
Right.
I mean, it's fairly clear that we could require a bond, require anything. You know, studies, special
Right,
studies,
the
we just don't
loophole
do
has
it.
been this other
That-
category.
Internal
Right.
road.
Yeah.
Right, so we need to.
But even on internal roads, I think we have the right to require it be bonded.
But isn't it easier just to strike the internal road
Oh, well, I'm not disagreeing with that, yeah.
and then make sure that it's inspected as it's constructed, right?
So what this comes to is eventually we should be thinking about roads built to a higher standard,
Right.
because we're eventually gonna have to take them over and maintain them.
Well, there's some logic to requiring that anything that resembles a road connecting multiple lots
Yes.
should be built to an adequate standard.
Absolutely, whether we
Agreed.
take it over or not, because
Yeah.
safety.
Well, just point of, you don't want the thing falling apart
Yeah.
for the people who live there,
Right.
because then we get
Because-
stuck with the darn thing.
And safe.
i.e. Cascade Bridge.
Yeah,
This
right,
is not-
Cascade Ridge, there was,
And, well, not to interrupt you, Bill, I'm sorry,
no,
but,
that's all right.
because I'm gonna lose this thought, but, a lot of towns and municipalities require a percentage build out prior to acceptance of the road. For example, some towns require 90% subdivision build out.
90%.
That can be as high as that. The trouble is that if you have, say you have a 25 lot subdivision, and you got one house, and the town votes to take the road over, well, you know how many cement trucks, dump trucks,
Right,
everything else is pounding that road for the next, how many years? And the town has to go in and rebuild the road earlier than it should have to.
Such as Cascade.
So it sounds like we're all on the same page. So,
For this other category that, I mean, right, it seems like you still have another category, and that's the driveways that can go to 4 homes.
right.
Or a road that's going in a condominium complex. What do you wanna see for a width on something like that, Chris?
I guess again, it depends on the number that they're serving.
Mhm.
Um,
Say the driveway that serves 4 homes, that
yeah,
in the
it's
normal,
usually,
another community, it would be a limit of 2 to be a
it's
driveway.
usually 11 feet per lane, so
That's pretty wide.
20, 20 feet.
So you're not doing that now, are you?
All right.
The driveways that.
I'm
serve
sorry,
4
okay,
homes.
all right. Something, so I was thinking of a development like the most recent one. But for a driveway that you have a house here, a house there, you know, 4,
Yeah,
certainly wouldn't be 11, I would say probably 12 feet total.
if there's shoulders, would you be comfortable with the road that only serves a few homes going from 20 feet to 18 for the pavement width?
I would-
That's usually what I've done for like a country
That's
lane kind of
reasonable,
standard, yeah.
Not to get off subject, but it's still, it's just a different thing. Are there any, if somebody is putting in a driveway, you know, I've never been asked this while I've been here, but, and they're going off one of our town roads and they're putting in a driveway. I've seen it several places in town, it's before I've gotten here, but they put in a smaller culvert than what is upstream. In other words, it could be an 18-inch culvert upstream, they put a 12-inch culvert in this driveway, and we got problems.
Don't you have driveway regulations?
Yeah, I guess so.
You have-
Yeah,
That's
but I
really
mean,
what your
you know,
driveway regulations.
it's happened prior to me, so
Yeah.
I guess,
Would be part of the driveway permit
Yeah.
process.
Right, so I found communities vary on whether they require a driver's permit on private roads. Do you do that here?
Well, usually that's part of the whole subdivision. Someone applies for a subdivision or development. Each driveway is marked off with culvert sizes and everything. So Jim's kind of out of the loop on it, although he does get feedback during the application process. But all of these lots that are vacant now, like Cascade Ridge, they all have a driveway cut and a culvert
In the
size.
cul-de-sac.
Oh,
Very rarely do we get a request for a new cut off a town road.
Right. Very good.
if you did get one and it was on a private road, would you consider that your driving regulations apply?
I would assume so. I mean, obviously, if I get an, I don't,
If it's not spelled out on a recorded
Right.
map with the registry of deeds and subdivision, yes.
yes, we would.
So those,
Mhm.
I think those, your feedback that, yeah, you like the way this is going and yours that I'm on the right track, I think that's what I needed to keep going with the subdivision regulations.
Okay.
So while we're on roads, just a minor thing, I noticed in the subdivision regulations, it defines arterial roads and feeder roads.
I'm getting rid of those definitions.
Okay, good, because I was gonna ask a question in town, what the hell is the difference between an arterial road and a feeder road?
Yeah.
And what do you, and you need to look at the sign regulations in the zoning, because they talk to the intersection of arterial roads are the only place that signs are allowed on the public right of ways. So it just needs to be consistent with whatever we define things as.
I'll look at that. I
Okay,
don't want another task that is to this
well,
bundle, but I'll look at that.
but if you're
Bill.
getting rid of if you're getting rid of feeder roads,
Yeah.
then we're fine. You know, everything is an arterial road, that's the town road.
So an arterial just becomes a road.
Well, it's, you know,
They're gonna be
I
the
don't
main
know.
roads through town.
Right.
Yes,
That's all
well,
that's
then
saying.
change them to
Right.
main roads, but, you know,
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Okay. So now the,
I don't think I have your email address. You could just add it here. I have Chris's.
But consistent with that, as soon as we say it's a town, arterial road, town road, main road, all the same thing, requires a certain construction standard.
right.
yeah, right, I don't have any.
That's
We're gonna ensure
certainly,
that
that I think is the bottom line.
For the subdivision regulations, it will go by how many vehicles per day. But I'll look at that reference in the zoning to make sure we're not making anything conflict. with
I have a
that.
question on the definition of how many vehicles per day. I'm assuming that is an average of the estimate of year round.
Yeah, I mean, everybody uses the same engineering.
Well, but we're not, we're not everybody, so there's,
That's
for
what
example.
seasonal, I know what you get.
Right, so in other words, the number of vehicles, on July 4th weekend is significantly different than the number of vehicles October 31st.
Right,
All right, so what I'm saying is, I'm assuming we take what we assume for a whole year and average it.
I don't think so. I think we
No, I
take
think-
what's in the manual
Right.
unless the developer can document otherwise with a.
I'm asking
I
what
think
is.
you assume full-time residency and go from there.
So if, you always keep coming back to me.
Yeah.
Not just because it's easy, we know where I live.
Mhm.
All right? So that, for example, the only person that is a full-time resident on Devereaux Way are Mike and Tina.
Mhm.
All right? So basically what that would be is 2.
Right, but if you want to apply an engineering standard, you should take 6.
it needs to be built for, you need to be conservative and make sure. people
Assume
could
all
just-
is
Could change.
So we would have to,
Right.
all of it is gonna be, all of it is full-time residents.
Where, yes,
In order to do it.
Potentially
Right.
could be.
yes.
Right.
Because you have to design for the potential.
Okay.
Is the quality of a state road that is Highway 49 different from a town road?
No,
Well, the standards can be done.
but the standard,
Yeah, the standards for construction are different for
Different classes.
Interstate 93 versus
Right.
49 versus,
That's not the question.
what's that?
The question is Highway 49 runs through the town?
No.
No, it
that's
doesn't
does
anymore.
not.
Not
No, the
anymore.
town
It
road
ends
goes
at
to
Town-
the line.
Took over that road too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why.
Say that again?
The
From
town
Triple I
took
Road.
over 49 from the state.
From Triple I Road.
And the bridge.
Just
From
the end of
Triple
bridge.
I Road.
No, not
49.
Triple I Road. That's 49 now.
No,
It's
from
Triple I
Triple I
Road
Road.
up to the ski area. That's 49.
That's the, I asked that question
I
yesterday.
thought from
Yeah.
Triple I Road up was not 49. I'm wrong?
I
49.
was led to believe
49
49 is
ends
At Triple I Road.
at the
No.
intersection.
at the intersection of
49
Triple I
ends, okay.
Road and the Ski Mountain Road.
And then,
Right.
So that's ski, so all the way there, all the way up to the base lodge?
No,
No.
no.
So
the
the state,
juncture.
the state truck comes in on 49,
Right.
they take a
They go-
right, go left, or
Or
a
left,
Left.
take a left,
Whatever.
Goes all the way up to the split.
go up to the split, turn around, come back, and then go back
I
down.
think what you're confusing
Split
is
meeting.
that something can
That's
be,
right.
Ski area.
something can be state maintained and not be numbered. I think that's
Right.
What you're confusing.
So the town is responsible for that?
No,
No.
that's
So
the
I
state.
think- I think
But
we-
it used to,
I'll
49
explain
used
to you
to
later.
be
I
the
understand.
loop through town
Right,
Right.
they no
one
longer. is.
time, and including the bridges, and the town took it over. I'm not exactly sure why.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna, I was trying not to ask.
Curious of that argument.
And why we took over the dam too is another good question.
It
So I
was because of
think-
sidewalks, right?
that if
Well,
you-
the dam was, I mean,
that's all right,
that was, people voted it in.
Yeah.
It's still designated, I believe, when you look at Google Maps,
Yeah. well,
Wow.
that look is still
no
North
longer.
It's not a
Highway
state highway.
49.
Yeah, it's Valley Road from
Okay,
Valley Road. and
Which,
Triple I.
and it probably, I'm wondering whether it had to do with speed limits, but,
Well, and sidewalks too, I think.
yeah.
well, the point that I
We
was
wanted
getting
to
to
control it.
is that
Yeah.
the standard of the road from 49 as you go into town changes abruptly.
Well,
No,
standard, you mean the snow.
The quality of the road.
well, at the intersection of Boulder Path and Snow's Brook Road, I mean, you know, at that,
Yeah.
At
That
that
tri- that
intersection
tri-
down by
that
your
right by
house.
my house.
right down by your house, that's where that's where everything kind of changes.
Yeah.
From that
It changes. What's it changed to?
Well, the main road, Valley Road
Mhm.
coming in,
Right.
which used to be the old 49.
Yeah.
You go right past, right to the front of your house.
Right.
The construction standards change.
Okay. For reasons that we don't care about.
Well, it was
Yeah,
once
lost
a,
in the
once
time,
once a
missed
different class of a road.
Right.
And it was a state road.
All right, well, why don't we leave the roads and go on to our visioning report? That was really a great, meeting that you ran, Tara, thank you.
Welcome. So I think that Terry wanted this on the agenda so that the board, had a chance to weigh in on the language that I put in the introduction in the report to, make sure I wasn't putting words in your mouth of what the intent or purpose or before Nick puts it online. We wanted to call it a
Only
draft.
78 participants.
We wanted to have it called a draft till you give it your blessing to put online.
Oh, I thought there were 178 people there.
78 signed
signed
in.
up, I think.
We can't really, thanks. We can't
Thank
really
you.
confirm how many were there if they didn't sign in, but 78,
There were a handful that did not survive, so
wait,
they don't sign.
Very unique town.
Never remember. So I don't have a problem with the introduction. I have some questions as we go in.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with it.
I don't think the intent was to talk about the content
Well,
But-
is this gonna be published now?
I thought it was gonna,
If this is gonna be published, I have some questions about some of the interior line items.
I guess what you do with it is not something I would have included in.
So is everyone okay with the introduction? before we move on?
Yes.
Yes.
Do we have to move to accept the introduction?
It's just a report.
Yeah, just-
No, I think you do need to just give direction on whether you want it on the town website.
Well, since it's,
Yeah.
Yeah, why wouldn't we want it on the website?
no, I don't have a problem putting it on the website, I just like to discuss some of the items
Right.
that are.
I mean, I saw this as a planning document as we go
Right.
forward on the master plan.
Right,
Right.
and I had thrown out just a half a page, kind of off the top of my head, what you might draft a vision based on that. I think that.
So it doesn't address next steps or any of that in
No.
this document.
If I was, no, but as a planner, I can't really help thinking about your next
Yeah,
step.
right, yeah.
You know, I think it'd be easy to put together a survey to follow up on some of these thoughts that came out in the vision report. And obviously, I'm available for whatever you guys want to use me for.
Yeah,
But that's normally, I think,
The next step.
what I would see as the next step of use this information to draft a survey. And if you wanted to have an online survey, it's pretty quick and easy to set up, and I pay for a SurveyMonkey license for just any of my communities to use.
What is the difference in interior? What is the difference between an opportunity and a suggestion? I was never an English major. So what is the difference between those two words?
Well, I lumped them together.
I know you did, and I know you did. And I always thought there was a difference between an opportunity, which means, hey, whatever, and a suggestion, which means, hey, we kind of want to do this.
Right,
So if that's the case, I think that some of the items that are in here may be opportunities, but not suggestions.
and I lumped them together.
Did I say that properly?
That's saying
I know you
that
did.
here's a list that has some opportunities in it and some suggestions in it.
I understand. My issue is this, all right? And please understand that sometimes I read funky things in with some of my other life. Sometimes when you put something out there that is a suggestion, it means people think it's actually going to happen. As opposed to an opportunity, which doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna happen. It means, hey, maybe this is gonna happen and maybe it's not.
But you're freighting this document with much too much significance.
Right, it's not
It's
not
nothing,
something
right.
that's gonna happen until you put it in the master plan as a recommendation.
I understand,
Out of
but
an action
except
plan or
that
something.
it's going to be out on the website.
So, well, we can have a preamble that just says
As
what
what
it is.
people
Then I think
said,
that may
You know,
fix.
but you know what I'm saying?
No, I understand what you're saying. We don't want people to think that this is a roadmap that we're
Right.
following.
Right, we don't want somebody to sit here and say, well, there is absolutely a need for rentals and starter homes that are affordable to families. That may or may not be true, and that is something that we have been
We're
talking
still
about.
looking at, right?
But I don't think we want to say, A, that it is definitely a need, because I'm not convinced that it is. And B, I'm not convinced that it can be
Right,
solved.
I think just a
So-
preamble that talks about
So
guidance.
so maybe in the introduction, back to the introduction, which we said was okay, we ought to set the stage a little bit more for what does this information really say?
Yeah, you
Just
know,
around the
And what it
workshop
is
summary.
all this was designed to do was provide input to the committee that's working on it.
Or
That's
under-
its only purpose.
right, I agree.
so
I
if
mean-
somebody wanted to send me some language to augment or revise the introduction, that makes it clearer to the reader.
You
If
understand,
if
you
don't
understand what I'm
feel-
saying?
No, because this is a summary of what people said.
Right.
this
Oh, it
is a summary of what people said, whether you agree with whatever he said or not, this is a summary of what people said.
So why don't we put that under workshop summary? As following summarizes comments at the workshop. Something to that effect, right under workshop summary.
It is not intended to necessarily be included in the town master plan.
Right.
Well, yeah, be careful about that. Are you gonna give the impression that you're not gonna listen to
I
their
didn't,
input?
what I
or-
said is, it is not
Well,
intended
people-
to necessarily be included. It may, or you could say may or may not be, or,
But we just say it's a summary of the meeting.
Right.
I mean, how,
okay.
that's what it is, right?
If people misread it, then they'll just have to be corrected. I mean, I don't
I
understand.
didn't
the-
see this document as
There's
a
anything.
mandate to the
Okay,
planning
right.
board.
Right.
This is
Right.
not a document that says the planning board has to do this.
So what was your language? Sorry, I didn't get it all.
I don't know that I did either. Something like, the following is a summary of
The
public
discussion,
comments
public
Public
comments.
at
right.
the workshop.
That's fine.
Even though workshop summary kind of says that, but it clarifies it.
Okay.
I think that. And if someone says, misreads it, then we just have to correct it.
I just, you know,
I think it's offensive to, I think you could run the risk of being offensive to the public if you put too many disclaimers on the
Right.
input,
Could be reread as, we're not paying attention to this, but here it is.
you know? I wouldn't do that.
That's right.
All right, so with that
Thank you
comment,
for your
then
assistance.
That's
they
right.
can post
Or we're
it.
gonna probably disagree or ignore it.
Take it under
Yeah.
advisement.
People were wanting to see that online, so I think that's
Yeah.
Right.
great. Any other comments about that?
Well, I don't have a problem putting the statement in. I would, now that I'm looking at the introduction again, some statement that says the purpose of this meeting was. And we ought to be able to answer that. What's the purpose of this meeting?
To gather input for the first step in
To
the process
gather,
of reviewing
to write
updating
what is-
master plan.
Right?
which kind of comes back to saying the same thing again.
Gather input,
What was the first
The
sentence?
first sentence,
okay.
Input from the public.
All right, well, okay, I didn't read that sentence.
The first one's easy to skip.
All right, that's fine.
and then in,
Then I'm okay.
and the third sentence of that paragraph,
Mhm.
the rest of it.
The important thing about the introduction is that we don't have to do anything specifically.
Right,
We're gathering information from the public.
It's mainly
Right.
for a review of the big picture stuff, the review of the
Anticipate uses
vision
of the
section,
information.
and identifying important issues, and I put that in the third sentence.
Yes.
Again, it's not a roadmap for a specific,
Can we change
The
the
visioning
word,
section.
can we change the word, in the last sentence, where it says should be emphasized to maybe? Should is kind of a strong word.
Well, weren't you trying to identify some of the issues that should be emphasized in the update?
From
Isn't
a
that
town
how you
perspective.
gather and how you use public input? What should you be emphasizing in the update?
Well, this should mean that we,
well, you're looking at it from a legal, I think.
I am
But
looking at it from a legal.
Should is a.
I
legal meaning.
apologize, sometimes I do that. But I'm looking at it as somebody else that is gonna sit here and say, well, I said that, and why aren't you doing it? There are people,
Correct them, you just have to correct them.
well, they kill me for beatings.
That's all right. You can do that. Review the vision of the current and some of the issues.
I think it's fine to put may, but I'm not sure it's not.
I just
good,
don't like
so-
the word should, because
May
should,
makes it sound like we don't really,
as opposed to, you know.
this is what people think should be in the,
right.
should be in the.
I don't have an objection to it at the
Right.
moment, but I know what Mike's driving at.
Yeah, we just have to deal with it and.
But these things that find their way into the master plan,
Or not.
well, okay, or not.
I'm not concerned with the ones that do find their way in. I'm concerned with the ones that don't.
I guess in my
Oh,
mind
right,
as a
right.
planner,
Mm.
when we say the issues that should be emphasized in the update, I mean at the level of the school, the public land access, the trails. I
No,
don't
no, I
mean the
understand.
points under.
Yeah, I understand.
But if I was doing your master plan update, I would take this and make sure that there's a focus on each of these topic areas
Right.
in the plan.
Whichever way you go.
I don't have a problem with an emphasis on the major topic areas.
Yeah.
It's kind of the ones that are under, but if I'm the only one that,
Yeah, what Mike's talking about is that if it finds its way into the master plan vision statement, that some period of time that passes, a year or so maybe, somebody's gonna stand up holding this page in his hand and say, this is what the planning board
No, this is what, the whole
said
point
they were
of the
gonna
meeting,
do.
this defines the point of the meeting.
Yeah, and that would be
It
a
doesn't
quick,
say.
Right, I'm not objecting to
Right,
that.
but
I
you
am trying
can't-
to make
But
clear
that's
what
what
then you
Mike,
just correct
But
it.
I
this
think-
is
I
what
think
Mike's
we
driving at.
We
Just
all
correct
understood
it.
what
And
Mike was driving at.
the discussion will be about the actual master plan language, chapter language.
Recommendations in the plan.
Right.
We haven't written it yet.
But what I was trying to explain to you is what I meant when I wrote that sentence. So another way to word it, and I'm wondering if this would work better for you, would be identifying some of the general topic areas or something like that that should be emphasized in the update. I mean, that's what, right, it's the big categories, I think, that you come out of this with. It's a visioning session, it wasn't developing recommendations. Sometimes you get some good ideas that you wanna
Yeah.
no,
think
there are
through
lots of,
on,
there are lots of
but
good ideas.
that's not why we were there.
No, I think, frankly, I think the vast majority of people are gonna understand this is merely throwing things up and let people discuss it.
The word we were using, aspirational.
The debate is gonna be, the discussion is gonna happen when we change the map, when we recommend changes.
But would you rather see this word issues changed to general topic area?
That sounds good.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
That sounds
And would that help with your
If I'm
concern?
the only one that is an idiot, that's okay.
Well, you're a
Wouldn't
good,
be
you're
Wouldn't
good.
be, wouldn't be,
Being a stickler
it
is-
wouldn't be the
It's
first
good.
time.
It's a good, your view is a good filter, so I think if we change it to general topic areas, then nobody could come back to some detail in
Make
it.
a misunderstanding
Yeah, I just,
of the intent of what
Right,
this is.
and that's why Terry wanted you to have this conversation.
Now, you had talked about a survey.
That would be my recommendation.
Yeah. Do we believe that we could get a minimum response rate of 30% of the residents?
to do what?
Sure, I mean, we did for
Well,
the
it's,
survey.
surveys to me, one of my big bugaboos about surveys is they're not valid unless you're getting a 30% response rate, minimum.
We did the surveys with the SE group as part of
And,
the village.
and we
and
got those numbers of the total number of residents or property owners.
Well, overall, we put it out to property owners as well. I don't remember what the breakdown was, but we definitely got a pretty strong
What would be
response.
standard?
How many property owners are there in the valley?
Oh, I don't know.
Thousands?
1,600.
No, I don't know about.
1,500?
They're that many?
There are
Somewhere in that.
the number of residents that's in our subcommittee, there was 1,340 properties.
Well, the-
So that would mean in order to get 30% of that,
Well,
We need close
it's
to
just my
500.
opinion that surveys that don't hit that target, there's no validity to them.
Right, the
Well,
statistically.
that's,
you know,
that
statistically-
isn't true. I mean, a
Well,
community,
you know,
a
I
master-
can get you articles
Oh,
if
yeah.
you'd like to see them that'll make the argument of why surveys are invalid.
Bill, there are reasons that we don't do a statistically significant survey with a master plan. If we wanted to, what we would do is do a random sample of the community and give them multiple contacts to get a high response rate. That's how I would get you something with a high statistical significance.
So you're saying the
But-
purpose
but-
of the survey is simply to give people a chance to vent?
Yeah, to give input. It's another way
wait,
that,
wait, hold.
I'm not.
There's two
I'm not-
very different words I hear.
Yeah,
I'm not
well,
done,
I'm okay with
No,
that.
no, no, no,
I'm trying to
because it's
explain-
important.
I'm trying to finish
Go
explaining,
ahead.
in community planning, the master plan survey serves it serves several purposes. One is to get direction on how to go on some of these issues, because the people that care about it are gonna fill out the survey.
Right.
They're
that's
gonna be the
problem.
the ones that tend to go to vote on your budget, on your zoning changes. Those are the same people. It also, does give another opportunity for everybody to feel like they had input.
Mhm.
And for you to tell everybody what you're doing in terms of the master plan update, so that they feel part of the process, rather than in 2 years, here's a zoning change and it was recommended in the master plan. Well, what master plan? What are we talking about? So the more opportunities that you have to let people know you're doing this update and they feel part of the process, you're engaging them and bringing them along to hopefully be more supportive of your recommendations.
The survey also will capture the many people, I think, who aren't here.
Or who weren't able to attend. the
Right,
Yeah,
you'd send it to
meeting.
the voters
property
and
owners.
property owners.
Property owners, that we
Um,
send it out with.
And responses can range from 15 to 30% in a community survey. 30 is good and definitely a good target, but it's not irrelevant data if you don't hit that. And again, the way to get
Yeah, but
that is
it's
to
in
do a
the
random
cat-
sample.
It's in the category of this data, which is, it's I thought the meeting was terrific in the fact there were a number of people there that I'd never seen before. But I don't think they were necessarily representative of the town as a whole, which is fine. I mean, they were the ones who chose to show up.
Yeah.
But some,
Self-selected
but
survey.
somewheres along the line, we're struggling with the issue, what does the town as a whole represent?
I think both your suppositions are correct,
Guess that's why I'd see a survey as a good next
that there were
step.
people there that you hadn't seen before.
But a
that-
survey,
But that group that came didn't represent the,
but a survey.
I
of
don't
property
think they
owners
did, I don't know.
covers
I mean, if they did, we're way
Right.
off base, you know?
I'm not hearing out of both sides of my.
Sorry, I'm saying that a survey of property owners, a mailed survey would capture a greater percentage
greater
of people,
disparity.
who would answer, I think.
Right, and it would be a way to do the next step on these.
Potentially.
areas.
Surveys
Yeah.
are.
If we don't get a good response,
I
we make of it
understand
what we
your
will.
Well, how
Do you
much,
think we should give it a shot, is the question.
how much effort would it take to do the Survey Monkey, get the electronic survey together? Is that something that can be turned around pretty quickly, or is that a?
Or do it with a mailed
There's
survey.
13 odd hundred property owners. I hate to ask this question, and it's probably unfair to ask, but out of those 1,300, how many email addresses do we have?
On file, not many of them.
Well, no, why don't we just, mail it with the tax bill.
Yeah.
The town has
I don't know about that.
mail it with the water sewer bill. I don't know, there are ways to figure that out.
I think the DRA won't let you, you need to check on.
Right, well, we know who the property owners are, so we just
Right.
use that address, that's
Yeah.
mail it
That's
separately.
always gonna be your highest cost in a survey.
Right.
Is the mailing. printing.
Well, what is it, 40 cents each?
But I could work with Mark
50.
and Nick to
50
put
cents
together
each?
a cost estimate for
$600 odd dollars?
helping with the survey and the
That's
mailing and all that.
But 600, you're talking about spending, not counting printing costs, $600 to mail, it's gonna cost $750.
But couldn't we just put a little tagline in the water sewer bill with a link address? I know we've put different notices in the water sewer bill before. I wouldn't have to put the whole survey, just a little thing, a little survey, put it out to the homeowners associations to disseminate to their owners, post it all over the place, put it on the website. I mean, there are ways to do it.
I would definitely encourage doing it electronically.
Of course, yeah.
If we could make that happen, I think we'd get a better, faster response.
So who doesn't, and how are we gonna enforce that to do it?
It varies community to community, but when I've done a mailed survey and given an option to do it online, I'm not getting many doing it online yet. But if you don't give the option, that's a different picture.
Well, in the grand scheme of things, a budget of $5 million, $600-750 doesn't seem.
Well, it's gonna be more than that. I mean,
Yes,
you've gotta work, I need to give you some help making the survey
Right.
questions
Right.
and
But it's
somebody's
maybe
gotta
under
enter the
1,000.
data and But,
We can figure out what. that
unless it's
costs.
all online, and then, I mean, that gets rid of the data entry, is the nice thing about
We are
that.
talking about the master plan. of the town.
Yeah.
And I feel bad that I don't remember all the details with the SE group survey, but I'm sure Mark would have records of exactly how that was implemented. And it might show us a good way for going forward for doing it electronically.
So maybe as you're all working with your working groups, you know, start kind of thinking about questions and think about questions that you'd wanna, what questions are in your mind as you read the workshop results, right? You wanna know, well, is this how everybody feels, or is this
Right.
some people there felt that's, and you don't wanna make it too long, so we'll kind of take all those and then combine them and get rid of some. And that'll be a start, right? Think
Yeah.
about what you're gonna do something with the answers. Don't ever ask questions just out of curiosity. Ask the ones that you're gonna make decisions based on the results.
Mhm.
With the attendance of the workshop, Terry had me pull a list of who were residents and who weren't residents.
That's interesting.
And out of the 78-ish or so people, 2/3 are full-time residents that were at the meeting. So I know there was discussion about it not being a good representation of the town and full-time residents, with 2/3 of the people were full-time residents that showed up. So that's something to consider as well.
That's good.
It's also good that many came for the workshop with weren't already here.
Well, it's, very good when you sit here and that means like 30 people that aren't full-time residents. So
Right. But the-
So we want to move forward with the survey, and if so, when should we try to get questions to Tara? She's not gonna be at the next regular planning board meeting, right?
When does your next,
In
we're
November
talking about a
14th.
sewer bill,
We're mailing
Oh,
those out
sure,
probably
yeah.
next week,
Oh,
and then how often do they go out?
quarterly.
quarterly.
So I think we'd be aiming for the next quarter, if you wanna do it that way.
So we have some time.
But we're trying to have this master plan available for town meeting, right?
No, it's not adopted by town meeting, you adopt it.
It's our document.
It's our document.
Mhm.
When do we want to have this finished?
I don't think we've ever discussed the due date.
But isn't that kind of important? Then this should not be a project that goes to infinity beyond. We should have
You can't have a date, but,
well, I'm not saying a definitive date.
Right.
I'm saying
Right.
A
a goal.
typical master
A
plan, it's 12 to 18 months
to develop it.
to get the public input at the beginning and go.
One of the things I recall learning from one of the courses they had on this was that you don't have to do the whole thing at the same, I mean, if a chapter is ready to go,
Could be rolled.
But
You don't like that idea?
Yeah, no, I don't like to see.
they're
us
putting it
make
out that
chapters
New
discrete.
Hampshire was
It's-
a municipal.
You know, I did that
Yeah.
training when I was 29.
And your experience is this is not the way to do it.
And pretty quick after that, decided, chapters it's a comprehensive plan.
Right,
It's all gonna hang together.
Interconnected.
right.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have a chapter in isolation, yeah.
Fair enough.
So, as part of our homework for the working groups for the master plan, we should be thinking about questions.
Survey questions.
Yes.
So when do you want them by?
You say December? Wait,
Well,
or-
sooner, I think you're gonna need them sooner because then that's when the next water,
No, if it's going out in a week, then we've got 3 months after that.
Right.
That would be, that goes out in January,
Right.
end of January.
If you got me some ideas, like the week before your December meeting, I could do something for that. I could be prepared to talk about it.
So end of November.
Okay.
Let me just make sure on that.
Yeah, just gonna check the December meeting date. Is 12.
12.
So we should have our survey questions.
Work on them
completed.
on Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Well, there's a week, but there's a, yeah. So the first week of December, that would, or do you prefer the last week of November, probably better, even though that's Thanksgiving, week, somewhere in that time frame. Or by the 29th, we're meeting on the 12th.
If you got me if everybody got me some thought the week before your meeting, I can
So,
bring
okay.
something that we can talk
By the
about.
5th.
via
Yep.
meeting,
By
yeah.
December.
Okay. I'll have them in the office.
Super. So we don't have any new business. So we'll move on to committee reports.
Stay and listen.
Okay, yeah, we don't have a whole lot left. So the town core group, we met with, the Tyrell group, and Tim Smith. And kind of review where we're at with what we want to do with the trail that was presented to, the town meeting, that kind of lollipop, and explain the challenges that we were facing. It was a good preliminary meeting. We'll be following it up, with some additional talks. just to
Challenges,
try to, I'm sorry?
challenges refer specifically to the difficulty in receiving a bid.
Well, the bid, the high price of the bid, I believe Marcus said the last meeting, we did just receive the one bid, and it was for higher than we had anticipated. When we had initially put out the plan, we had expected there would be a bit more partnership happening. Due to the timing of when we're trying to get it done, that partnership didn't really work out, so we were able to clear the air a little bit and what would work better. And so we're working on trying to establish a better partnership for working towards on the trails. Nothing definitive has happened yet. So it's still in the works. But the next plan is to get a more comprehensive engineering plan for that bit around the pond, so we can put out the larger scope of work and hopefully get more than one bid to be able to get a more accurate cost in time for town meeting. The frustrating bit of this entire process that I've learned from the inception with the study is just, we think we have a good idea, we get it together, we bring it to town meeting with what engineers tell us should be an appropriate amount of money. And okay, it's decided in March, and then we move forward, and we want to get it done in the summer or the fall, so we have this very finite time period. A lot of construction people already have their work, so we're just trying to flip and get, and of course, it's working with the select board and making sure we get the budget to be able to get the engineering done before. So it's been a learning process. The beauties of working with a municipality versus a private business. But I think we're on the right track. So that's where we're at.
Sounds like fun.
And conservation,
Maybe next year.
that's
what happened, yeah.
So in conservation commission,
Yeah, so, the commission also has a consultant, Rick Vanderpool, that's helping us out with, the NRI, and he's been really good. He's
What's
also
the NRI?
National Resource Inventory.
Okay,
He also works with about 6 other towns. He's been very, very helpful, getting us in the right direction like Tara has been doing with us, so. That's ongoing, and we're actually meeting tomorrow night. And I'll give them some input that we have here today, so we can move forward with that. That's about it.
Great. Do we need to get into where all the committees are at? Covered.
Still working.
I think there's, in the housing, there's an interesting question, and it comes back to kind of this. One of the interesting questions, and this comes back to one of the highlights I did, with need rentals and starter homes, forget starter homes. They're affordable to young families. One of the interesting things, and I've spoken to a bunch of people in the last couple of days, one of the interesting things about rentals in this town is that there are very, very few year-round rentals available. Like, almost none available. Almost everything is a seasonal rental. So that when we talk about the need of rentals and for affordable young families, there really are not a lot of things that are available for someone that wants to become for a family that wants to become a resident here. And that's something that we are finding out more and more and more. And I spoke to Kim and Kate Smith the other day, who reaffirmed that and some other things that I asked them about. And I don't know what, if anything, we do about that. Probably nothing, I would assume. But it's just kind of interesting when we talk about the school, young families, and so on, that kind of leads to the nature of the town. That, this really doesn't provide for that alternative. I just thought that was.
Yeah, and I
kind
think
of
it's being
interesting.
complicated by the rise of the RBO, all
Yeah.
those services. I was surprised, somebody was commenting yesterday that there are more rentals via those mechanisms than by the traditional real estate office renting.
Yeah, especially relatively short term.
Well, I understand that the short-term rentals, the reason that people do them is they make a heck of a lot more money.
And that's the bottom line.
They do.
If you own a condo, you can make a lot more money on a seasonal rental or a short-term rental than you will on having a yearly rental.
Right.
You're well into the, 2,000 and above, just for the seasonal rental.
Yeah.
So, a month.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I was
what young
shocked.
family is gonna come in and
I was shocked at
be able to afford that type of rent? So,
And when
That's-
you want to use
yeah.
just part-time yourself, then it works out.
Yeah,
well.
you want to be a tennis player, you want to be a skier.
well, that's the other part.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's
So-
why those who say that, well, we have a lot of potential for rental because of all the condos we have here, I think it's missing that point.
Which comes back to several of the things that are in here and several of the
Right.
things that we talk about when we talk about the character
Right.
of the town. And we sit here and we say, well, we would like to have young families, except our inventory of housing goes against it.
Or how it's used,
Or how
how the inventory of,
the inventory is available, it's not being used in that
in
direction.
that manner.
And that's why a lot of communities are starting to regulate that, but it doesn't make sense in a resort community.
Right.
Regulate what?
To not allow short-term rentals in some residential districts. That's becoming pretty common now. But it makes no sense in a resort.
Resort community, right.
Now, it's my understanding that, and I don't know if this matters, but it's my understanding in talking to various people, that some of our condo associations have put in restrictions or other things with regard to Airbnb and other things. All right,
Yeah, some of it's communications, like I know in Windsor Hill, you have to communicate with the board who is coming in and when, and make sure they have contact, especially during snow season when cars may need to be moved or.
so, I I don't think we can do that as a town.
Even if you could do it, you could probably write an ordinance. But is it enforceable?
The way our rental units are currently being used is kind of dictating the tenor of our town character, to say whatever.
So you've looked at this before, right? I mean, in terms of rentals and what the town allows and am I missing something? I forget.
No, I don't think we ever looked at it in that sense. We
Yeah.
did look, there was a requirement by the state a couple of years ago to be able to demonstrate that you met the standards of affordable housing.
Okay,
And we did that study and we easily met the standards of
we-
affordable housing.
Yeah, we did,
Easily met them,
our subject, we talk about that, our
I
subgroup,
have, go ahead.
yeah.
did the calculations to determine that. we
Yeah,
meet
we
the
haven't even
government,
close.
both, yeah, that's right. Both federal and state standards are easily met.
Yeah,
So
Now,
we can say that we have affordable housing, workforce housing in
Right.
Waterville Valley.
yeah,
Well, that's interesting too, because, I mean, it's gonna come up at our little group. But it was interesting, I spoke again to Tim and Katie Smith, with regard to their workforce housing, the Waterville Valley Resort Association, Waterville Valley Resorts Housing. Is, could that housing that they are purchased and used also be used for other work? Right? Which I thought was a really good question that came up in our subcommittee. He said, well, sure it could, however, it is 100% full currently, and they have a backlog of people that are looking for it, so the answer is, the answer is yes, however, practically, the answer is, ain't gonna happen, Mike.
Right.
To put it nicely.
And even if so, it's not conducive to young families or that.
It is clearly not conducive to young families, it is basically effectively a hotel. Right? So again, that's not conducive to a small, whatever.
To accommodate a workforce.
now we don't
To
have any,
accommodate, right.
we don't have any regulations on Airbnb rentals or anything like
No.
that,
no.
which is what you were getting.
You know,
at.
you might be able to, I don't even know whether legally you can write them, but then my question would be, how in the world would you even begin to enforce them?
Yes.
Yeah,
You know?
and you can, regulate short-term rentals.
Right, yeah, I
But-
guess you can.
But yeah, I mean, my recommendation to all the communities I work with has been to stay away from that topic for a while because it's still being settled in the courts. We don't have clear legislation. And yeah, how do you do the enforcement in a fair way?
But see, I would have a legal question. And I have to ask somebody, I suppose. Let's go back to Airbnb. And in this state, there is a hotel tax, whatever tax. So that, for example, if you rent for a weekend or whatever at
Pay the
Black,
tax, right,
right?
pay the 9%. or
You
whatever.
pay the whatever the hell percentage is, and they collect it. I don't know how that works with an Airbnb.
Airbnb automatically does it for you.
Yeah, in the
They do?
states that require it,
Okay.
they do it, yeah.
That is my question.
Yes.
It's
Say,
state, yeah, that
Yeah.
tax is a state.
Right.
Right,
Just
some
helps,
states don't do it, but in
Airbnb
the
did
states that do VRBO, Airbnb, they do it.
They do it, they collect it.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, as a resort, I mean, this is again, I think we've mentioned a number of times, the dilemma we have. You know, being a resort or as opposed to being a simple town. Right, I mean, I don't see how you get worker housing in here or affordable housing for young families unless you put some kind of restriction on how people can rent their property, because the money in a resort town is to rent the property.
And even if you
seasonally.
did that, it wouldn't necessarily, like we have a small rental unit that we do Airbnb, mostly because part of my family comes for the summer.
Right.
And
And it
we
gives
get
you the
that
opportunity to,
availability,
right.
and we have to
So-
be able to
so,
say
but-
no for a large portion of the year.
But-
We wouldn't even do it year round if we wanted.
But
Right.
think about, as when we talk about the housing section
Right.
of our master plan.
Yeah.
All right? This brings up the whole question of, if we're gonna talk about the housing section, what do we want? I mean, do we want young families? If so, how do we do it? If we want to be,
You know, and in the side, not an aside, but it's the same. Craig, we talked to Craig Larson the other day, and he was adamant, I mean, about stop referring to this as a resort community.
He's on that.
He said
side,
it's a community. Yeah, I mean, and I, you know, and it makes you stop and think, you know, we think of this as a resort community. And he said that's a problem. It shouldn't be a resort. It's a community.
are we a town that has a resort, or are we a resort that has a community?
Well, right.
Right.
And his point is resort communities are history. There is no such thing anymore. And we need to start thinking about this place as a town.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree 100%.
Right, now you can define, you can get into questions about what do you want your town to be. But,
No, I thought it was very.
I thought it was helpful, you know, and in all of our writings, we should stop referring to it as a resort community.
I agree. We are a town.
We're a town.
But we are a town, but how do we solve our young family issue,
Well,
or do we?
yeah,
I'm not sure it's
well,
possible
I
to
think
do.
that's the first question is, or do we, you know?
Is it something that a planning board can try to
You know,
execute?
I mean, we should treat everybody equally. I mean, there's
I
no
agree.
argument I think about that,
But
but
it's not our
if-
business.
Well, but this
But
gets to,
whoever chooses to live here chooses to live here. I
Yes.
can't make young people move here.
this gets to the vision statement and
Right.
the strong feelings about, and it's listed in the document about school and shops and restaurants, that sort of thing.
Well,
More
the one
town-like,
right, the one
as
that I
opposed
looked at
to-
was working on a plan for preschool.
Well, school.
And
Well,
no,
school thing.
there's a school, and then the issue of preschool and all the other things.
Right.
Well, and after school.
And the after-school
That's
program
for working families.
is another, we have a whole after-school program
Run
at
by
the
the
rec
town.
center. All right, as
Run by the town.
opposed to something more done by the school, which is something we'll talk about. at school board meeting.
Well, anyway, we can.
I don't think we'll get around these issues as, okay, if we accept the fact that we're a town that happens to have a resort in it, and that these opportunities that we talk about, that is a hairdresser,
Right.
insurance agency, restaurants and that sort of thing, is not gonna happen while we have 400 and some permanent residents.
No, I don't think so.
The closer we get to something like 1,000, the more you'll see these opportunities develop. That is, that somebody who's an entrepreneur and says, am I gonna put my money down in Waterville Valley, said, to open this particular business?
They're gonna put in a seasonal restaurant.
Why are they gonna do it? They're gonna do it because there's
It's a resort,
opportunity,
because it's
Yeah.
seen as a resort town.
because there's enough economic activity here to generate an income.
But I think the bottom line is, as we do the master plan, we want to put down what the vision is. And then it's a matter of giving that guideline for the zoning or
Right.
other perhaps tax
Right.
incentives to make that plan come to fruition.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So that's, I mean, we're not necessarily tasked with knowing how to do it, but, right, for the master plan, we're just putting out.
Well, how much can the
Well,
town do?
I
there's
think
a-
in
there's
the
a
end, I
great
think you are
dichotomy.
tasked a little bit with trying to come up with some ideas as to what specifically we should work on.
Right.
You know, otherwise
gonna
the selectmen
thrive.
aren't, you know, I mean, the
Right.
last time, and if you read the master plan last time, they did have a list of things
Mm-hmm.
that they wanted the selectmen to work on.
Mhm. As it should.
Right,
But this gets to the basic question of, are we a resort community?
right.
You're gonna go two different directions.
The resort community, as we were talking about it earlier, is a community that is driven by the activities of the resort. Where the
Sounds like
resort,
Marble Valley to me.
where the resort draws large numbers of people, residents for a very short period of time.
Sounds like
Visitors.
Waterville Valley to me.
They show up en masse, they do whatever activity is available here, and they leave.
Sounds like Waterville Valley to me.
When we were talking about the zoning changes last time, and there was something in there about dormitories, I don't remember exactly.
Well, no, that was the
And-
question of worker housing.
And the conversation was to make sure and define them so that they were just dormitories for the academy.
Right,
Right.
we didn't want them
Why-
renting it out.
But, so I think the master plan, it is your responsibility to
Mhm.
identify what the community wants and the sort of
Mhm.
hope for that, and
Mhm.
to give that some direction and try to identify some steps toward that. And, but the issue that you're having of young families being priced out because our resort community is, in every resort community, it's not a problem unique to you, but some things that you can do at least for the workforce or make sure that you're zoned for Tim to be able to create more if he's got a backlog. Because that's something you can do. If there's people commuting from Plymouth or whatnot that are paying for gas and vehicle miles because there's nothing for them here where their job is. There's a small thing you could look at.
Right.
Are you enabling him to have what he needs under the zoning for his workforce?
I didn't suggest, I wasn't doing it to suggest that, I was, and that is an issue. And if you talk to Tim or the entrepreneurs in the town, getting workers is an issue. Absolutely, huge issue,
It's a
Which is
limiting
why-
factor.
right? And I'm
Yeah.
sure I don't know if you've spoken to Tim about his, but, as soon as I brought it up to Tim and Katie, they kind of looked at me and said, we're 100% and we have backlog.
But there's a recommendation you could put in the master plan to review the zoning and make sure that you're allowing the work,
Well, but I don't know what the.
housing for your workforce, not just
Right.
If-
what meets the statute.
I'm not
but-
sure that would necessarily be, a majority view in the town.
True. At any rate, when we talk about it at the how, I was kind of bringing it up because at a housing subcommittee level, all right? Yeah, clearly, and I spoke to Mike and I spoke to Jeff Brown and other people. Clearly, we have affordable housing, all right? There's lots and lots and lots.
By the states.
By-
Yeah, state.
There's
federal-
there's
federal
lots and
stuff.
lots of stuff that you can buy here
Right.
that has 2, 3, 4 bedrooms that you can buy for under $300,000.
Right.
However, if you want to come in and you want to rent for a year, you have a serious problem.
Right, and if you're a worker in the mountain where they're not paying you a heck of a lot of money, you're gonna struggle.
Which is why they have their sort of dormitory style
Right,
thing that they bought and they
Yeah, right.
run, and it's not available to other people because they come first, and that's a given, kind of. But it comes back to the whole question of how do we, assuming we want to be a town, which we do, and we want to bring in younger people, other than me, old people, okay? How do we do that and accomplish that? And is that something that we should be discussing in our master plan?
Yes.
And I'm looking,
yeah, I'm
I'm
saying at some
looking
point,
for
yes.
guidance.
Right, now.
I don't know how you do it.
Here, the only thing I would critique is, because I can do that.
We can do anything to me, you know that.
Yeah, is the definite, I believe completely that we need to bring more people in to live here full time.
That's the issue.
And I don't know who they are. The question is, should you go after?
But see, I know who tells me they are coming. So that, for example, when I talk to cross-country skiers or I talk to tennis players, and I talk to tennis players and I was talking to one last weekend and who's, in his 50s and
Right.
sitting here saying, he can't wait until his kids are gone
Right,
so he can retire and move here full-time.
right.
So are we a retirement community?
We're going.
Well,
that
I
direction.
see a label, but
I don't
the
wanna-
question
I don't wanna say that.
becomes,
Well, then why
if
do we
you
need
look,
school?
if you
I
look
don't wanna say that
at who's
either. I don't wanna
moving
move on.
here, and I don't know.
Because of the state mandates that we have to have a school.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
No.
No, it doesn't. It mandates if we don't have a school,
We have-
We have to provide for
Right.
we have to
education of
provide
children.
for.
That is, okay, miswording. The state mandates that we must supply
Right.
competent education.
You
Right,
could
so
send,
you have to educate our children.
you could put them on a bus and send them to Plymouth,
Okay. Point taken.
theoretically. All right, but that's not the point. The point and.
Yeah, I'm not arguing one way or the
I
other.
don't know.
You just made an interesting point.
Right.
Which comes back to, and I don't want to do it, but you say, oh,
Go
we're
ahead.
a retirement community, and my answer is no. We are a town,
But
but
as we're seeing by the reaction to the group on Saturday, this doesn't look like our town, which means there are a whole lot of
Well,
young
the
people
group-
there. So in our
right.
minds, is this a retirement community already?
You wouldn't have
Is
walked
this
away
something we
with,
wanna
from the
talk about?
visioning session that we were, you know, that we were an active retirement community.
I think we're
You
gonna
know.
be forced to talk about it.
But,
No, who's moving here? We should talk to the real estate people and find out who
if you
is
start
buying.
with the assumption that you would like to drive the number of full-time residents up,
Yes.
want to make that.
you know, if you start with that assumption, then the question becomes, well, who are you gonna go after?
Right.
Or who will we attract with what we have now?
Right, or, well, I'm a believer that you get what you work on to some extent. So who do you target? I mean, do you go target young people, which would be great, but, you know, what's success look like?
Well, we also have to consider that what happens is it's largely a result of market forces.
Yeah,
That
right,
is-
the world's changing,
Yeah, if you argue that the population is aging
right?
and that the people who
Certainly is in
are,
New Hampshire.
and New Hampshire is aging and the number of people who are buying here now are, say, 55 plus, that's where you're gonna achieve your success if you
Right.
market to that segment of the population.
Right?
You know, there's another factoid, as they say, to throw out, which is kind of interesting in a perverse kind of way. If you look at, based on the information that is available, if you look at the median income, which is always whatever, of Waterville compared to Plymouth, Campton, Thornton, Romney, whatever you got,
Nobody.
all right?
Well, holiness,
Holderness, even Holderness,
That's a little different.
all right? We're 50% higher than everybody else.
right? Yeah,
We're a resort community with a bunch of old folks. who retired here.
Don't use the word.
Well, I mean,
well,
there's-
there are some
it's true.
people that still believe, and I, you know, after talking to Cantlin, he thinks the salvation still lies in, let's get a hotel, more hotbeds, you know, and we'll get people
Resort.
that way.
That's resort.
Well, and, you know, that's an interesting, you know, that's the old model,
Yes, it
you
is.
know?
the other
Whether it's
issue,
still valid,
It's still-
I don't know.
but I mean, there are other issues. It's not, to get for example, if you want to get more young people in here,
Yeah,
people go where the jobs are.
yeah,
We're a long way from a lot of jobs.
Or
Right.
do we make it a stipulation that if you're gonna create the hotbeds, you have to create year-round beds as well? Like, do we put that out to potential developers? That, you know, this is.
Where's anybody gonna, I don't know where they're gonna develop.
Well, for any hotel
Well,
or whatever that's
right.
built.
Yeah, but a hotel's not gonna have a year-round, a hotel by definition is,
Why, what if we were to say
Well,
you had to have X
Black Bear
amount of, exactly.
Yeah.
and Golden Eagle.
The reality is they're gonna be condo hotels in today's
Yeah.
world.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
they're
is.
not gonna be
These are not hotel
freestanding,
chains.
no one,
They're condo
no one's
hotels.
building
The
those.
problem
anyway.
comes back to you don't wanna zone against being able to rent out
Right,
the year-round bed
Right.
as
yeah,
short-term rental.
You don't wanna tell a private
So you don't have
property
any way
owner
to
what he
make
can do.
them not
No way to-
become Airbnb,
Right.
even if you did that.
Right.
well, anyway, the other thought that I had, listening to the visioning meeting, was there were two issues that came up that I think we can wrestle with now, independent of the plan. There were suggestions that were made. One was the thought of, why are we holding these meetings during the day when I
Mhm.
cannot attend? And I'm sympathetic to that.
That's been my gripe.
You know,
Day
you know,
one.
and I would ask the selectmen to likewise think about that. I think the planning board ought to think about, Why are we holding these during the day when nobody can come? And the second one was, why do the police patrol Route 49? They should be focused on keeping the traffic under control within the town. Now, I'm not saying that they don't do that, but your impressions are they sit trying to catch speeders on 49. That's impression. I don't know whether that's reality.
Well, the town boundary goes down a ways.
I know
A
it does.
long way.
Yeah.
Long way.
All the way
Long
down to
way.
the bridge.
Down to the boundary with, Thornton.
But, you know, that someone speeds down there is less of a concern to me than someone is driving 50 miles an hour, 40, even 40 through the town streets.
Are they spending a lot of time on, I didn't think they were.
I don't know.
In my
I think they
5
do.
months of driving in almost every day, at least twice, I think I've seen a Waterville cop sitting out there once.
Why, if you see Thornton and Camden.
Yeah, Thornton and Camden.
Especially Thornton,
Yeah,
That's a revenue center for them.
right.
but.
Well, no, it's a revenue for the state. You don't get a dime for giving out tickets.
Yeah, that's true.
The town does not get any money
Right.
from handing out tickets.
That's so.
That is
It
so.
all goes to the
That's why I
state.
thought Thornton was there and why they were
No.
always out.
Thornton, everything, every dime they collect goes to the state.
I actually asked Dave that question once out of curiosity, and that's what he told me also. It surprised me.
Well, certainly as a board, we can simply vote as to when our meetings are.
Yeah,
obviously,
well,
you
it's
know.
just, as you
So
know,
we should
that
have
came up
everybody
in the
here
meeting.
But
and-
even
and
the
do
school
that.
board, which meets at 4,
Right,
Right,
we have been criticized that it ought to be at 6,
right,
right.
all right?
yeah, people are still getting back from work or what have you.
But anyway, I thought those were valid comments
Yeah.
of something that we could at
And we can
least
certainly
consider
check on
now.
the-
We don't need to do a master plan to.
And we can certainly look at the select board,
Well,
what's going on
if,
49.
you know, maybe it's not true, you know. I mean, when I first moved here and then there was, we had a policeman on a bicycle.
All right.
So well, in terms of the time, we can just vote on that at any particular time.
Sure,
right?
absolutely.
So,
Well,
Let's
I
get
don't think it's
all of us
a
here
plan
and
we
vote
should
on it.
Well,
lose.
should we put that on the agenda to
I
discuss
think
for
we
next
should.
month?
yeah, that's what I'm
I
saying.
think we ought to
Yeah.
see if there's an alternative time and date we can come up with.
Yes, because
No, I
absolutely.
don't.
Now, we already have Saturday locked in,
You
but
know,
at least through December,
But
right?
when-
So,
Right.
But Tara, would you come in the evening?
I go to my other 7 towns in the evening, so we just gotta make sure it's not one that
Once
they
again,
will really.
As I said at the select board meeting, Waterloo Valley is a unique town in so many ways. Yeah, let's put it on the agenda, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Definitely.
well, we ought to think about it.
We can talk about it, we don't have to
Yeah.
make a decision, but let's put it on the agenda.
Oh, well, if we're looking at trying to attract people who are still in the workforce, it's the number one way that I have felt excluded all along is to not be able to make meetings. So, all right. Anything else?
No, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I
Second.
second.
All in
Go
favor?
ahead.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone.